mentioned Eugene Chibu here, the Ichibu's Outbox. I have in this particular episode of the Outbox, I've got a very important person with me, someone that represents a section of the society that we hardly talk about, which is the traditional society. I have with me here, I call him Professor, so please, that's me. He used to be my professor and colleague at the Nambia University of Science and Technology, and currently he is the Ombara Ochitambi of the OvaHerero. And I would like to begin by saying a warm welcome to Chief Katjiua Mutjinde.
Thank you for welcoming me to your show.
You're welcome, you're welcome. I've been looking forward to us having this conversation. In fact, I doffed my cap for you.
Yes, I know. I know it has taken more than a year to get me here.
Yes. It's been a while, and I want to really take the opportunity in this podcast, this particular episode, to go through quite a lot of issues with regards to land. As you all know, this podcast is about land. But when you speak about land in Namibia, a lot of other things come up. It's not only in Namibia, wherever you go, land is merged with politics, it is merged with culture and history. And so that's the situation in Namibia as well. So I want to believe, and for anyone who's watching out there, this discussion is about land, but you can't speak about land in this country or in this part of the world without providing a historical background and without it diverting into other things. So a popular mentor of mine, Hogamaga, at the university, now retired, Technical University of Munich, used to say, it's all about land and it's all about people. So when we speak about land, we speak about people, and when we speak about people, we speak about history. So fellow Namibians, fellow Africans, and everyone who's been watching this channel, I would want you for a start to tap down there, subscribe to this channel, and if you're listening to this particular episode and you're watching, if you have any comments, please be respectful, leave it down in the comment section, and also like or dislike is all allowed. That said, I would like to start. I know I've identified him. He's somebody I respect very well. And in fact, I would say that I've had various, intimate intellectual, periods with him, in the course of my growth as an associate professor and then a professor, because I've worked with him. In fact, to put it more directly, he used to be my boss. And so with that, I hope every listener can understand the respect with which I'm coming, into this episode. But that said, he is also someone that represents a people, the OvaHerero. But I will do my best to be as critical, as forthright, and as direct in this discussion. And there's a reason for that.
Yes.
While you represent a section of the society, my podcast also represents a section of the society who may be part of that section or may not be part of that section. And so the viewership, the audience, and are people who may be coming from diverse background, diverse opinions. So some things I would perhaps question them, probe them, to ensure that I represent that particular section. So for a start, I would like you to introduce yourself as you would like the audience to know you.
Oh, yes, my name is Mutjinde Katjiua. So I used to be an associate professor at Nambia University of Science and Technology. In fact, I recruited Chibu as one of the colleagues in the department here, after recognizing, of course, his excellent work internationally. When I left the university to do farming in 2022, I was then elected as the OvaHerero Paramount Chief on Damara. So for the last 2 years, about 2 years and a half, I've been serving the OvaHerero people in the highest office of the OvaHerero Traditional Authority. So that's what I am these days.
Before I go ahead, I would also like to point out we also do reads in the newspapers about traditional tussle within the OvaHerero people. What do we take from that? Are there factions, or could you just enlighten us on that before we go on?
Yes, this is the 7th transition of power between one leader to another within the OvaHerero Traditional Authority. In 1863, the authority the OvaHerero people came together and elected their first Paramount Chief, Chita. The position is elective because before colonialism, this was the head of state for the Herero government. So it was an elective position. Over the years, when the Germans came into Herero land at the time, the first Paramount Chief died, and the Germans ensured that they install somebody who they were able to manipulate. Therefore, there was then a tussle again at that time. After that person died, Chief Kutako, everybody knows Chief Hosea Kutako. This is the chief, the Herero chief who took the Nambian case to the United Nations in 1946. He governed the community for 50 years. After his death, again there was another tussle there in between. Unfortunately, as usual, the Herero people, their interest, their ideology, what they stand for and so on, survived, and Kapua, Clemens Kapua was then elected as the Paramount Chief, or he succeeded Kutako in that sense. Then came Kwaimari-Rwako, who died in 2014. Kwaimari-Rwako was succeeded by Advocate Vekwi-Rukoro. Vekwi-Rukoro took the Herero case to the United Nations, to New York, United States of America, taking Germany for the crimes it committed here. Then in 2014, Advocate Rukoro passed on as a result of COVID and so on. And then there was a tussle within the community. The overwhelming majority of the chiefs elected me through the Chiefs Council as the 7th Paramount Chief. So that's where we are. And another section of the community elected somebody else. And of course, the balance of powers are obvious. The observers can comment on that, not me.
Okay. Well, no, thanks very much. I think for actually setting up that chronology and the line. Obviously, if you're out there and you're a Herero, and depending on whichever side you are, what's important for us in this channel is to ensure that we give a voice to everyone.
Yeah.
And the issue of chieftaincy also, I'm from Nigeria, it's a common thing. My producer is from Ghana, and she will tell you it's a common thing, right? But we always find our way. Yeah. So I would, my prayer is that whatever is the torso, that it's, be settled in peace, and love to all Herero people. But thanks very much. I'm very proud to have you here. Now, speaking about land, I know you can mix it up, you know, from the traditional authority, but at the same time, you were also a professor, you know, in land administration, so I'm sure you understand the perspective where I'm coming from. So, of recent, the OvaHerero people had a celebration not long ago.
It's a commemoration.
It's a commemoration.
Remembrance Day.
No, Remembrance Day.
Genocide Remembrance Day. Last week. On the 2nd of October.
So on the 2nd of October, the OvaHerero community had a commemoration or Remembrance Day of the genocide. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So, when Germany invaded Herero land, in 1884, it occupied much of Herero land and Nama land. And that's when Nambia, or much of this side of the world, was demarcated as German Southwest Africa. So in the year 1904, when there was a war between the German invasive occupation forces and the Hereros, the German government, the imperial government, declared a genocide against the Hereros on the 2nd of October, where the intention to wipe out in full the complete population of Herero, all those that would be in the territory of German Southwest Africa. If you were to survive, then they were compelled to leave the territory. That is why today you have Hereros in Botswana, the neighbor country here, and South Africa, some in Angola. The extermination order led to 80% of the Herero population be killed, hanged around and so on, put in concentration camps and all that. In 1905, Germany went further, the imperial government, to issue expropriation decrees to take all movable and immovable properties. So all of Herero land was taken, all of Herero livestock, whatever that is immovable, was also confiscated. So the Hereros were not allowed to keep livestock up to 1913. And in fact, livestock, people started to formally to have livestock after the Union of South Africa took over in 1915, the territory. So when we talk of land for the Hereros, it is that land that was confiscated in full. It is that land from which the Hereros were displaced. So the commemoration we had last week, it was the commemoration or Remembrance Day of the genocide, the marking, the beginning of the genocide.
Thank you. I also understand that you led the OvaHerero community to a march in honor and memory of those who perished during the genocide, and to bring, obviously, to light ongoing demands for justice and recognition.
Exactly.
Now, you handed over several petitions,
from
what I read, in the news, including one addressed to the German ambassador to Namibia, and that is Thorsten Hotel.
Yes.
And you also addressed one to the president of Namibia, Ndemu Pelila Netumbo Nandi Daitwa.
Yes.
Can you speak on the content of these petitions to do?
We handed over 4 petitions.
Oh, 4?
Yes. The first petition went to the German ambassador, to the German government. It was to call the German government to face reality, to address the issue of justice for the Herero people, to be fair in its dealings, like the Nama government did in 1952, where Germany recognized the genocide the Holocaust it has committed against the Jewish people.
Sorry, in
1952.
1952, Germany recognized the...
Yes, the Holocaust.
The Holocaust, okay.
And Germany engaged the State of Israel, the Jewish Claims Conference, the Jewish community, that's the Jewish groups. It was a group of 23 Jewish representing Jewish across the globe, the various countries. So it was called the Jewish Claims Conference.
Yeah.
So it was the state of Germany, the Jewish Claims Conference, and Germany itself, tripartite arrangement. So we have been pushing for Germany to move away from its position to insist on a bilateral discussion between the government of Namibia and itself. And in fact, to follow the resolutions that the Namibian government or the parliament, the Namibian parliament in 2006 adopted, that there be a tripartite arrangement between the victims, this is the Namas, the affected communities, the Namas, the Hereros, versus the perpetrator, the state of Germany.
So, sorry to continue.
Yes.
You're saying that already in the Parliament of Namibia,
Yes.
a tripartite arrangement had already been endorsed.
Yes. In 2004.
In 2004.
Yes.
Okay.
It has four key points. Recognition of genocide, that there be negotiations between the affected communities and the German state, that the Namibian government as an interested party facilitate the negotiations for reparations.
So you're not asking for something that has not been endorsed by the state?
We're only saying, let's follow what we've agreed, that the Namibian parliament has resolved.
And this particular petition is
to the German state.
to the German state. So that's petition 1.
Yes.
Petition
Then
2.
petition 2, we went to the Evangelical Lutheran Church, the Christian church,
Yeah.
here in Windhoek, represented by Bishop Frank Schutte.
Yeah.
The church, the beautiful church in the center of town, it was built by slave labor, by our people, on our land. The Christian church, or the Lutheran church, has several properties in Namibia on our land, confiscated through the decrees I referred to, the expropriation decrees. We were saying to the church, it's high time for the church to acknowledge its role in the killing of our people, in the genocide. Remember the church, it was the church that went around and announced to the Hereros in the bush, saying, peace has returned to the land, please come.
Let's get this straight. When this happened, the Hereros ran into the bush,
Yes.
obviously for protection.
Yes.
And then it was the church that now called on them to come out, that there is peace.
They survived, the survivors.
Yeah.
Remember, a lot died in the Kalahari.
Yes.
Please come, we will feed you, we'll give you water. Peace has returned to the land. Then people were put in what they called holding camps.
Holding camps.
Holding camps. From these holding camps, they were then transported to the concentration camps. Several holding camps in the country, but there were 6 concentration camps.
I'm sorry to continue again, and I hope you don't mind. This
No,
is what
okay.
the podcast is about. We're talking about 2 camps here. They were called out, and they were holding camps.
Yes.
And then there are concentration camps.
Yes.
So from the first, they put in the holding camps, where then you get water and food.
They were collected, fed a bit there, others can see it's all fine. When the numbers are sufficient for transportation, they were moved to the concentration camps. So the churches played a key role in getting people out of the bush, bringing them into holding camps, taking them to the concentration camps. where they died a mess.
What do you think? The church is supposed to do good. We assume, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say the church, when it comes to land in Africa, there's no strong history that the church has been doing good.
Yeah.
But for the benefit of the doubt, couldn't the church also argue that maybe the leading administration had wanted them to get people out, but then it was not the choice of the church that they should be sent to concentration camp?
There may be cases. I'm not aware of them.
I'm not aware of that.
But all the cases I know, the church played a key role in counseling people, in preparing people to go to heaven while the land is being taken. While going to heaven meant you go to the concentration camp to die.
Which is a passport to heaven.
Yes.
If that's, I'm not saying that it is, but perhaps this is what the church is thinking.
So what we're saying to the church, calling on its moral high ground, on its conviction to do good, that we need to talk. We need to talk, we need to engage, that we find a solution where we shall go. The church cannot be quiet in this process. That is the petition to the church.
Petition 3.
Petition 3 went to the Speaker of the National Assembly. Remember the genocide resolution of 2006 was resolved, agreed on in the parliament. The parliament expressed the will of the Namibian people. That's what parliament is, the will of the Namibian people. That will has those 4 legs I referred to. It was a genocide. Then there must be negotiations between the victims and the perpetrator government. Our government will facilitate the process of negotiations. There should be reparation paid. That's the 4 corners of the resolution. Now, Parliament remained quiet while the executive veered away from that resolution. The executive engaged with the state of Germany in 2015 to 2021 and produced a bilateral agreement referred to as the Joint Declaration to address issues of reconciliation and reconstruction, to provide projects in the areas of rural and electrification, sanitation, and so on. So the petition really said the Parliament abdicated its collective responsibility to hold the executive accountable to the decision, to the expressed will of the Namibian people. So the executive veered away and did something else, but Parliament kept quiet. So we're calling on Parliament to hold the executive accountable, to bring the executive to what was agreed on in 2006. That's petition 3.
Thank you. Petition 4.
Petition 4. And the last one went to the head of state, Her Excellency President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah. Being the head of the state, we're asking the head of state, the executive, is opposing the case we filed in the Namibian court. The case that we had yesterday, the 7th of October, was an interlocutory case. We applied for a joinder. We brought in 27 traditional authorities, traditional leaders of authorities, entities of traditional communities. We brought in the state of Germany to be part of the respondents to the case. the Namibian government did not oppose the joinder. I mean, for the purpose of the audience, a joinder is an application to add on people to the case who have, adding people or entities to the case, who have substantive interests in the outcome of the case.
Yeah.
The state of Germany has substantive interests in whether the joint declaration will be nullified in the Namibian courts or whether it will be endorsed as is. So Germany must be represented there defending its interests. That is why it is brought in, or that is why we want to bring it in the case, through a joint application. The state, the Namibian government, the executive, has no issue with whoever we brings in the case. But for the state of Germany, it has an issue, a different question, saying we can bring in Germany, but our Ministry of Foreign Affairs will not summon Germany, will not give service, the court papers to Germany to come to court. And in fact, the executive has hired lawyers to defend that the Namibian courts has no jurisdiction over Germany, therefore Germany should not be brought to the Namibian courts.
Which executive?
The Namibian
The Namibian.
The president
Yeah.
of Namibia.
Okay. Amongst these four petitions,
So we are saying, why is our government, why is the president overseeing a process where our government is shielding Germany from facing justice in our courts? That's the question to the head of
I
state.
think that was going to be my question before you chipped it in, because I wanted to ask in general of the four petitions, how many of these people or institutions petition are forthcoming in terms of, did you get good reception from them?
Yes, the German government, through its embassy in Windhoek, has accepted the petition, welcomed us into their offices, expressed that the ambassador will take the petition to his government. Of course, he would say, look, they would not mind who comes on board for negotiations. The government must decide, although they are pushing on state to state negotiations. So, but we say we don't want to come in just advisory capacities. We want to be substantive negotiators.
Thanks very much for expatiating on this issue of petitions, because we get lost even in the legal terminologies and the historical issues that tend to arise from this. But before I go to my next question, sometimes I ask myself, because here you're talking about concentration camp as at 1904.
Yes.
And the German, there's also a history of concentration camp with the Jews in Germany in the 40s, 30s to 40s.
Yes.
It makes me wonder, the German colonial administration probably were doing this, had done this in Africa before they actually shifted, applied the approach, maybe in a more sophisticated form or in the same way, in Germany. That is terrible, on the Jews. But you also talked about 1905 when you said all movable and immovable properties was declared that all movable and immovable properties should be taken from the Hereros. Now, immovable properties, that I understand, because that is land.
Yes.
And we will come to that on
That's
the show.
land, houses, whatever was there.
So, which one is the immovable movable properties?
The Hereros at the time had about 100,000 head of cattle. Remember, the extermination order said anything that is Herero must be shot or killed or destroyed. So that may be livestock too, I don't know. But they went on to take all movable properties, immovable, from the Hereros and Namas. So all the livestock to date. And that would mean goats, sheep, cattle.
This is quite interesting. Now it begins to make sense because cows are livelihoods.
Yes,
but in their own way, a movable thing.
This is why we are saying the joint declaration falls very short. It doesn't address issues of reparation. And it doesn't talk about restitution or compensation, all these things. Ignores anything that was taken.
Look, this is a very, I've never, in recent times, and I would say, when you're not from Namibia, is it correct to even say that?
Yeah.
Because I've also met Namibians who actually don't understand this whole thing.
Yes.
But when you don't understand it, the one thing not to understand the gravity of the problem, and also the insults that is added to it.
Yeah.
Because as you're speaking, I know that there's a time when it was released here in the news, in the national newspapers, that Germany accepted to pay 1.1 billion euros for reparation in the form of, for a period of 30 years, in the form of development projects and so on and so forth. Is that true?
Yes.
So it left me wondering.
But they're not paying reparations. They've changed it, they call it an atonement fee.
Atonement?
Yes, it's for atonement. Previously it was for reconciliation and reconstruction.
Yeah.
So they're not paying for reparation because they're not, because there is a misconception. Germany is saying, we recognize from today's perspective that the events of 1904 to 1908 can be called genocide.
What does that even mean?
It only means,
from today's perspective,
if I look back, that was genocide. But when it took place, it wasn't. Because when we're in the American courts, Germany, the argument was we were not classified under civilized nations.
Germany accepts that they were not classified as civilized nations.
We were not classified.
Us, which one?
In English, we Africans, blacks,
were not classified.
Blacks were not classified as civilized nation, under civilized nations. The French version of that reinstatement law, I think it's a law of 1868 or somewhere there. The French referred to as savages. The English version is uncivilized.
So who, if you can, I know we are moving a little bit out, but this is an educational one as well as historical and land administration issue. Who does the classification, please?
It's the whites.
So Germany is arguing
it's the West. It's the West.
They realize now that from now they see it as genocide, but it wasn't then. They do not see it as at then, because as at that time, them being in the community of whites did not recognize us as civilized people.
Yes.
So the only reason now they are willing to even start from today is because finally, them as being in the community of white people now recognize us as civilized people.
We are now civilized. But if the genocide took place today, it could be called genocide. But at the time, it wasn't.
That leads me to an opinion.
Yeah. Therefore, the 1.5 billion is an atonement.
1.1 billion is an atonement.
Yes.
But the Hereros and the Namas and the victims don't get it.
It goes to a government there will be a special purpose account that will manage it for those bilateral projects.
Bilateral projects. So who decided to be projects?
The two states in their negotiations, then the German state and the Nambian state.
I'm sorry, but in history, this issue needs to be looked well into. And the reason I say this, for once, is that if for a period of 100 years now, that this 121 years that this genocide has happened, Germany has been in denial about its own, the genocide it committed against the people in Nambia, the Herero and the Nama. And then upon showing atonement, Germany now feels that a 1.1 billion that is dedicated to projects over a period of 30 years, if I'm not mistaken, is good for atonement. That is what...
For the victims who live in Namibia.
For the victims who live in Namibia, not the ones that are outside Namibia.
Now, South Africa elsewhere.
That's what we call a well-calculated bull. In development terms, this is a well-calculated bull. And the reason this is a bull, I give you one. When did the Ukrainian war start? 2022.
2022, yes.
Between 2022 and now, ask your AI, consult your stats, consult your news. Germany, in terms of funds and material, has invested nearly more than 30 billion for something that has not much to do with them, just because Germany is there for the good, which is to protect those who have been invaded by Russia. I'm not a politician, I have no plans to be, and so what I'm saying is simply based on what is in the books. But I would think that if Germany has so much of a conscience to spend more than, call it 10 billion, 20 billion, whatever you want to call it, within 3 years to protect a neighbor that they consider to be a good neighbor, it is a calculated after 120 years that Germany will be talking about putting out 1.1 billion to be spent over a period of 30 years and through development projects.
For people who have everything up to date.
This is crazy, and I think anyone that is out there should understand this. If you are a citizen of Germany, a citizen of Europe, a citizen of Nigeria, a citizen of Namibia, a citizen of South Africa, wherever you come from, this whole thing is an abuse to common sense. And I say that because Germany has them.
Let me shock you.
I don't want more shocks. Don't do this to me. Okay, go on.
Let me shock you. At the time of German unification, 1990, and Namibia's independence, the Namibian state and the German state agreed that Namibia will be given more development aid than any other country. That increase, that high development aid, plus the support given to SWAPO by GDR, East Germany, will make future reparations to the Namas and Hereros void. That's an agreement.
Between Germany and
the Namibian state.
Now it gets more complicated.
So that is where our state, as we speak, is in court spending my tax money to fight me not to get Germany in a court here. That's yesterday.
Here is my opinion when it comes to the dynamics of interaction between the Namibian states, the German states, and the OvaHerero Nama people. If you ask me, I think every stakeholder in this tripartite stakeholding should work together in the sense that Germany should be put in a position where they can and they should deliver their atonement, if that's what they chose to call it. But that atonement should be well coordinated and respectfully delivered to maintain the dignity of the Herero, Nama people and all Namibians who might have been directly or indirectly affected by this pack of issues that have been going on for over 120 years. And the Namibian government, I believe with the power of the states, should be able to facilitate, create an enabling environment for any atonement made to reach the grassroots, to reach the right people, whether be there in Namibia or outside Namibia, and to benefit the development of the country.
Now, there is a guideline for that. The United Nations have developed guidelines for reparations. That has about 5 key points, issues that need to be covered. We, in 2022-23, petitioned the United Nations. In February 2023, the United Nations issued letters to the Nambian government and to the German government, saying the negotiations that has been taking place does not qualify to be reparation. So, since Germany has committed a genocide, it must pay reparation.
So there's a fourth party in this, the UN.
Yes.
Do you trust the judgment of the UN from your interactions over the years? Okay.
Yes.
So please, I think that in Africa, this is not an issue of Namibia. If Namibia is good, one country will be counted to be good in Africa. If something Namibia is able to deliver an environment of justice for all concerned, it is good for Africa. So, and I believe that with the stakeholders mentioned from the 2 states, Germany, Namibia, the Herero and the United Nations, we hope that somehow we'll come up with a better result.
But before you move off that point, there is another stakeholder, is the African Union, which has declared 2025 as the year of reparation to the African people and people of African descent. This particular year. And our government is party to that African Union resolution.
Let's recognize the African Union and add African Union to the stakeholding, but it's good that you mentioned this, because many a times we read this in the news without these things being mentioned. Some people wonder what is happening in Africa. The African Union is a toothless bulldog, they are not doing anything. It's good that at least you are bringing these things out. From my heart and to all Hereros, to all Nama, to all Namibians that could have been affected directly or indirectly by this situation, I hope that we get to the end of this in a manner that will be beneficial, not only to the affected people, both in and outside the country, but also to every Namibian and any other stakeholders. So that takes me now to land.
Yeah, there are also other Namibians that were affected. Maybe you had a question about
there are other Namibians that are affected. I leave that, we'll talk about that later. I think that perhaps will be a point where I look at the social kaleidoscope of the whole thing. But definitely, I've read in literature about this, and I would like to get back to it. So, the genocide was accompanied by widespread confiscation of indigenous land. By German settlers. So my question would be, talking about atonement, talking about reparation. Now these are things, terminologies that are just coming up now, especially that of atonement. How should land that was confiscated from the Herero and Nama, from your people and others affected during and after the genocide, be addressed in today's land reform policies?
At first, we recognize that not all land can be returned to the Hereros or to the Damaras or to the San or to the Nama people. But we must recognize first that these groups of people who have lost the land, the ancestral land, who are displaced from their land, they are pockets of land that are central to their culture. Those pockets of land must be restituted, must come back as is, where possible. This would be sacred lands that are central to our African religion. This could be very historic sites that is important to our attachment to land and culture. This could be historical battlefields for other things and so on. Those particular pieces, more so the sacred lands. Sacred land to us, the Hereros, are mainly land where our ancestors, some of key people who played a key role in like liaison or communicating with the deities and so on, of the deity. Those people occupy a certain space in the Herero culture. So those pieces of land where when the Hereros pass there, normally stop and either keep quiet or take off their hats. There are such pieces across the country that should be retained.
So you're not asking for everything?
We're not asking for everything. It's not possible to get Windhoek back, the capital city. But when we're talking about reparation for the land loss or land taken, then we're talking for the value of the complete land. But in the Namibian context, when we're talking about the role of government to reform the land issue, with its resettlement or settlement program, the resettlement program must prioritize those who have lost land and the particular uses of land.
We're already touching on my next question, actually, and you hit a one-liner to it, but I would like you to expand on it. So, land redistribution may conflict with existing property rights as of today.
Yeah.
If we have to go back to history, and so how can Namibia balance the historical land claims by Herero descendants with current land ownership structures established during colonial and apartheid rule? You were hitting it when you mentioned, you were being specific about the sort of land that you think is returnable, and the ones that are not returnable. So maybe you can expand that aspect again for us to get clarity on that, because there are people out there who simply assume, like you're saying, return Windhoek to us.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
You see, we're looking at land reform in two categories: settlement program and resettlement program. Settlement is there are needy Namibians that do not have land that need to be settled. So we have categories of people that are really needing land. They didn't lose their ancestral land; they are on the ancestral land, but they are overcrowded. Okay, so they need some land. Then they need a settlement program. Now it's a question of how do you balance resettlement program where you're trying to bring back those who were on that land, resettling them back. You buy a farm here. All farms are being bought either from Herero land, former Herero land, or Damara land, or Nama land. All farms. There are no farms that are being bought, for instance, in Owambo land, in Caprivi, in Zambezi, wherever. Masubia, Kavango, Virigu, and the people around there. No land is being bought there for resettlement. The only land that is bought in Namibia is land from settler communities, from the whites, commercial land from the whites. These whites have taken this land from either Hereros, Damaras, some people to add, some people, Namas and so on. So you can't take this land that was taken from specific people and just be blind when you do resettlement or settlement programs.
I'll have to say something here. I think I have in the past spoken in conferences in Ethiopia, and many other places with regards to our context and concept of restitution. That first and foremost, whether you like it or not, be you black, white, green, red, yellow, whatever skin color we are talking about, or ethnic group, or ethnic nationality, or the nation, or any ideology, land disposition is called land disposition because land was taken away. That is clear.
Yeah.
If no land was taken away, it wouldn't be land disposition. Therefore, land reform and redistribution cannot also happen without taking land away.
Yeah.
That's also, and I think in the land management practice and theory, we're looking for a way to do the redistribution without taking the land, right?
Yeah.
Which is not possible.
Yeah.
So, and instead, it is best to find a way to do it without hurting people too much, right? So, and I guess that's why we have the willing buyer, willing seller in Namibia. So, which I give the credits to the government, to the state of Namibia for it. But what you are saying now is, when you redistribute the land, does it go back to the people from whom it was dispossessed? Right, I guess that's your point.
Yes.
So, and you are saying that the problem with the reform and redistribution is the land is taken back through the reform in a very peaceful and polite way. Trust Namibia for that.
Yeah.
But your concern is that it is not being returned to the people from whom that land came from, but rather it's being redistributed to other people who...
Yeah.
I get it.
It becomes a social re-engineering program.
I see.
To save election and constituency campaigns numbers.
I'm sure that those of us working in the ministry and those of us that have been working in the land sector can attest to this. I don't think it's a secret.
No, it's not, because remember in 2018, when the then Minister of Lands, Tony Nyoma, was asked to release the resettlement beneficiaries list. What did he say? That will cause civil war.
The minister said it will cause civil war.
The minister said that.
So that means the minister was aware that releasing it might create problems. Thanks for the openness. And if you're watching over there and you disagree with what is being said here or what he has said, please drop it in the comments very, very respectfully. And also, if you have evidence against it, that is, presented. But I think these things are not really secrets. As someone who's working in the land sector as well, although from an academic perspective, I know these are not secrets because the ministry does publish statistics of, the redistribution from independence up to date. I think they even release this every year.
The numbers.
Yeah, the numbers
of beneficiaries.
Yeah. So, but they are not releasing who. And in a true reform, I would say it should not be a secret.
Yeah.
And if a minister has said it will cause problems, then I would assume the minister knows best. It means that something is not being done the way maybe the majority of the population would want it. But I would also say the reform is a process. And so if things have not been done in a particular way that, a section of our society is not happy with it, there's still a chance, to improve on it. And so let's do our best to improve on what may be. But this has been quite an insightful discussion with you, and it's opening quite a lot of things. And the legal recognition of traditional land rights. The genocide dismantled traditional authority and land allocation systems, at least traditionally. Yeah. So to what extent should the Namibian government legally recognize and restore traditional land tenure systems disrupted by the genocide?
See, at the moment, the land belongs to the state. That's
in the communal.
Where we are.
No, the state says it belongs to the community.
Well, but it's vested in the state. It belongs to the community, vested in the state. You're right. It's vested in the state. Yeah. But there is no clear land rights, because you do acquire customary land right for your plot individually or household, you and your wife, or you and your spouse or husband. One of the things that is problematic, that is no longer there, is group land right at the village level. In my village, may have, say, 30 households, and they have individual plots, household-owned plots, sort of. But the commonage is not owned by the group that uses the commonage. So there should be a right to the commonage by those that have that commonage or that use that commonage, such that those village people can prevent others from taking their commonage. At the moment, it can be taken in sort of open access.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And I'll go to in your discussion as we've been going on. There have been times, we talk about the Herero and Nama situation, genocide. There's even been times, I guess, while responding to my last question, you mentioned the Damara. And I myself have mentioned OvaHerero, Nama, and other people. Yeah. Thank you very much, Chief. And in the course of this discussion, we've gone through, I would say, at least 2 key aspects. One is the petition with regards to the genocide. In fact, I would say 3. One is the genocide itself, the background. You've spoken about that with clarity. Then you spoke about the petitions in the process of trying to continue with the fight to gain dignity for the affected communities and also for the development of Nambia. And then we've talked about the land perspective of this whole discourse in terms of confiscation of land and property, as well as land reform. Now I want to take you to the other side. And this is a side that is dear to me because there is the literature part, and there's the literature perspective, and there's the societal perspective. And it is the aspect of the controversy around whether the Nama and the Herero are the only people affected by genocide. And even in answering my questions, you have mentioned the Damara at least once as people affected. I have also mentioned other Namibians without being specific. So there's a section of history, at least from literature, that argues that the genocide was not only against the Hereros and Namas, but also against the Damaras. And I don't know if there are others, but the Damaras seem to be singled out as one of the key ethnic groups that this affected, but we don't tend to hear much about it. So, literature aside, there is also a section of our society that makes the same argument, but they tend to make that argument now in a more negative way that does not support the cause, as if the cause is incomplete because we do not hear about the Damara. So I would want you to give an informed opinion on this issue, but before that, I would like to enlighten my audience on these issues of literature, because right now we need to talk with evidence. Now I want to take you to the other side. And this is a side that is dear to me because there is the literature part, and there's the literature perspective, and there's the societal perspective. And it is the aspect of the controversy around whether the Nama and the Herero are the only people affected by genocide. And even in answering my questions, you have mentioned the Damara at least once as people affected. I have also mentioned other Namibians without being specific. So there's a section of history, at least from literature, that argues that the genocide was not only against the Hereros and Namas, but also against the Damaras. And I don't know if there are others, but the Damara seem to be singled out as one of the key ethnic groups that this affected, but we don't tend to hear much about it. So, literature aside, there is also a section of our society that makes the same argument, but they tend to make that argument now in a more negative way that does not support the cause, as if the cause is incomplete because we do not hear about the Damara. So I would want you to give an informed opinion on this issue, but before that, I would like to enlighten my audience on these issues on literature, because right now we need to talk with evidence. Okay? Now, on literature evidence of Damara or Damara San affected communities by German genocide, I have identified 5 early or near contemporary works that either document explicitly or indirectly identify the Damara. Often in literature they would call them the Badama. In older literature, that's what I have seen. And when I'm talking about older literature, I'm speaking about literature of 1920s, and 30s. So they've been identified by some of this literature as among the indigenous people who suffered during the 1904 to 1908 German campaign in Southwest Africa. Before I go ahead to identify this literature, I would like to know, the genocide, was it 1904 to 1908? Or
yes. That's
it, okay. So that's what I see in literature, so that's confirmed. Now, one of the literature is the Elf Jahre als Gouverneur in Deutsch Südwest Africa. That's German. In English, the title is 11 Years as Governor in German Southwest Africa. Okay. This is a literature written by Theodor Leutwein in 1906. This Leutwein's 1906 memoir records the military campaigns, the killings, deportations, and the collapse of local economies. It forms part of the early documentary trail that shows the Damara to be among the affected groups. That's one literature. The second literature is a report on natives of Southwest Africa and their treatment by German. It's called the Blue Book. This is a 1918 Blue Book compiled by Major O'Reilly and later republished in a different title. In English, it says, Words Cannot Be Found. German Colonial Rule in Nambia. This is a literature that is highly annotated, and there's a reprint from that Blue Book of 1918 published by Jeremy Sylvester and Jan-Bart Gewalt. It is published by Brill Leiden, Boston in 2003. On page 62 of this document, they provided the estimates amongst the Herero, the Hottentots, and that's because it's an old literature, they're using Hottentots, and the Black Damara. Confirm, the Hottentots, they tend to use it to recognize the Nama, right?
Yes,
the Namas. The Namas. So, Jeremy Sylvester provided evidence in terms of population that as at his estimate of 1904 population, Hereros were 80,000, around thereabout. The Namas were 20,000 and the Bag Damara were 30,000, totaling 130,000 of these three main communities. But by 1911, after the genocide, the Hereros had dropped from 80,000 to 15,000. That is wiping out the community.
Yeah.
And that the Namas had dropped from 20,000 to 9,000. And the Damaras in that literature called Bad Damas had dropped from 30,000 to 12,000. Now on the screen, you would see the actual numbers. Here I'm giving the estimates.
Yeah.
And which led to the Hereros dropping to a decrease in population by nearly 65,000. The Namas by 10,000 and the Damaras by 17,000. And you can find this data in page 62 of this document. And there's a quote where it now identifies the Damara. It says 80% of the Herero people had disappeared by 1911. More than half of the Hottentots, the Nama, and the Bag Damara races had shared the same fate. So this is the second evidence. The third evidence is a literature titled Rhenish Mission or Missionary Reports and Correspondence. So this is a collection of reports. Contemporary ones published from early 1904 to 1910s. So these people looked into those reports. In these reports, missionaries on ground, the Rhenish Mission reports, including letters and annual reports, were among the first to report casualties. Hunger, dislocation, disease among indigenous groups in Southwest Africa was reported and included the Damara communities during the period of 1904 to 1908 campaign. And I think you have already mentioned the Lutheran Church as having a strong hand in this. The fourth literature looks at the British colonial compilations and trial papers that fed into public documentation. So this is a legal review of what happened then, and is considered again to be titled as papers relating to certain trials in German Southwest Africa, and the materials collected. Then this again refers to that blue book I mentioned before. Here it says that these early official collections and trial papers from 1916 to 1918 materials include eyewitness testimony, district reports, and lists that identify mortality and disruption among central and southern peoples of then Nambia. The Blue Book drew on them and explicitly enumerated high mortality among Damara, as well as Herero and Nama. Finally, the fifth document or literature is entitled, again in German, in fact it's two of them, the same thing published in two different ways. The Bag Dama, 1923, this was published. And then the same 1923, they also published the Bag Dama in Southwest Africa, published again in 1923, but this time by a man called Herman Henrik Veda. Veda must have been a terrible man, and I will tell you why. Because when I was reading this, I realized, one, why we should believe him, what he said, and why we should also hate him for what he is. So Veda wrote this. Historians take Veda, who was born in Germany, but died in Okahandja. His last mission was in Okahandja, very seriously. He was a missionary, ethnologist, a historian, a researcher. So one of his key tasks in this country as at then was research. So because of that, academics tend to believe him more, unlike the others that are selection of reports. So It's identified, this report, or his literature identified 30,000 Damara or Badama people. In fact, he wrote, 30,000 Badama wurde etwa ein Drittel getötet. Of the 30,000 Damara, about a third were killed, which again reflects what I presented before. So I've tried to present 5 different literature. It's not anyone is in denial of it in the course of my reading.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen any of the fighters for this cause, deny it. However, at the social circle, you tend to have some of our citizens who, for some reason, whether it is feeling or being left behind in the fight, think that the fight is not complete because the Damara are not part of it, or they don't hear of the the contribution of Damara within this fight. And so now, why do I think that Veda was a terrible man? This is now history. When I was reading this literature, I read that this Veda we're talking about here that wrote this later was, I don't know, elected or selected by the apartheid government to represent people in South Africa, which is a section. Yeah. And when he went there, his first speech there was that to tell them, and I'm not quoting him, I'm paraphrasing because I think the quotation is terrible, but he went there and told them that what is happening in South Africa, that what is happening over there, it's something that has been practiced in Namibia, Southwest Africa. So for Veda, he was saying that even apartheid was not enough because South Africa had not gone into communities to wipe out people, and that this is something they've tried in Namibia and it worked. So such a horrible man, and there are different devils that walked on this earth, such a horrible man, you would see that he doesn't care.
No.
He has no interest. So when he writes a paper to say whom he killed, whom his great-grandfathers killed, he must be bragging about it, and so he did mention the Damara. So having said that, I know this is taking a toll in terms of time, me talking. I want you to tell us, what is your opinion about those who were affected by the genocide, and is it only the Nama and the Herero, or are there others? And if there are others, why are we not hearing much about them being part of this campaign?
In the early 40s, when the third OvaHerero Paramount Chief, started the campaign against the incorporation of Southwest Africa as the 5th province of South Africa. At that time, the Hereros were also pushing for compensation for the losses of their numbers, compensation for the losses of their land. It was a decision of the then Chiefs Council, Herero Chiefs Council, that decided that the issue of what has happened to the Hereros in 1904 to 1908, their land and all that, that is a struggle we should start after Namibia's independence. That was a decision taken, a considered decision taken. I don't know whether others had such discussions in their communities. We are very lucky in a sense that the Hereros had a central government, whereas other communities in Namibia had royal houses. Each house, each so-called royal house
was more, why Herero was clustered, they were dispersed.
They were dispersed. not even a federal system with some sort of a central coordination, but mostly they were not centrally coordinated. The central governance helped the Hereros to galvanize a central position, what the community would think or want or considers at any time and point. When we had our independence in 1990, already in 1992, 2 years after Namibia's independence, we had started the issues of reparation. We pushed, we read around, we picked up the report of, Wetika report of 1985.
When you say we, are you speaking the Herero?
The Herero leadership. The Herero leadership.
Herero
leadership. We picked up the report of, the Wetika report of 1985 that defined the killings of Hereros and Namas as genocide. It's a UN report, it's a special rapporteur's report on genocide and so on of the UN.
I have a question there.
Yes.
Where did, the Hereros were operating as a kingdom, so like you said, they had that advantage.
Yeah.
Where did the Nama come in for it to now become Herero-Nama?
Okay. Fast tracking. In 1998, when we had discussions about how we're going to move in pushing for reparations, we read about this issue of what genocide is. We decided that our best weapon, our best chance of winning any court case against Germany is if we push that our case, the Namas and Herero case, was a genocide. It's a crime defined by the UN, a crime, the highest crime against humanity, for which reparation must be paid. Any number of killing, any number of dispossession does not qualify as genocide. Genocide has a specific, there must be an intent to wipe out in full or in part an ethnic group, a religious group, or some sort of a cultural group. An intent in full or in part, and various methods employed to do that. So our case fell squarely within the definition of genocide. We went for some years alone. You remember when we filed in the US in 2001, we went there as Hereros alone.
In 2001?
2001, the first case against Germany. As we are approaching the 100th year of the Herero genocide, we also started to say, look, we need to engage the Namas. So it was...
What year?
The discussions to engage the Namas were about 2002, 2003. It was solidified towards the end of 2003, manifested 2004 and 5.
Right.
So we engaged the Namas, we brought them on board, we started to have a joint campaign. We did not go to the Damaras, although we are aware that their numbers were also either by a third or by half slashed in the wars. But there was no specific order against the Damaras
By
the Germans. There was no specific intent. In fact, in 1904, when we were fighting the Hereros against the Germans, the Namas and the Damaras were part of the German military also fighting us. when the Namas realized that the Germans are actually intending to wipe us out, they withdrew from assisting the Germans in a fight. They withdrew. And then they realized that when the Germans finished with the Hereros, they would come to the Namas. That's why the Namas joined the war against Germany, and the extermination order was issued against them.
So the Namas had not been, the Germans had not gone after the Namas. The Namas sensed that they would come after them and took on to join you.
And therefore the Germans issued an extermination order
against them.
The Damaras continued to fight alongside the Germans, to assist the Germans, even at the famous battlefield, Waterberg, where you have Kafir soldiers' gravesites. Those Kafir soldiers are the Damara graves at Waterberg. Be as it may, the Germans could not differentiate between a black Damara and a black Herero. In fact, that is why at the beginning the Germans and the Rhenish mission will call us the Hereros, the Damaras.
Okay.
And the Damaras, the Ber Damaras.
Oh, they were calling you Damaras, and those were back Damaras.
The word Ber is Afrikaans word, means mountain Damaras.
They look at you as the same, but based on your location, they
mountain Damaras were the plain Damaras. Sort of.
Yeah.
So so the Damaras were caught in that way in the crossfires. Maybe not intentionally, but they suffered hugely.
You can't suffer wiping down half of the population without intention. I mean, I would say that. But
you remember when the German soldier finished the war? Von Trotter said he has done a good job. He's finished the Hereros. The small numbers of Hereros that have remained will be assimilated in the Damaras. The Herero nation will never exist again.
Okay, I get this part. I mean, there's been a lot, you've cleared quite a lot of issues here, but I do have a question with regards to, it seems to me that...
But I did ask the question, where are the Damaras in these campaigns?
But that's where I'm headed to. Yeah, because I know you don't want to answer that question. It seems, because now you're asking me the question, but
I will answer.
Perfect. And I just want to be sure that, because I want you, it's not an answer, it's an opinion. You know, people can agree or disagree, but as someone who's been a player, the central player in this, I mean, you've been at the center of this, for how long?
Me personally?
Yes.
Or Herero Nation?
No, you as a servant of Herero Nation.
Me as a servant, I came in actively in 2015.
2015. That's 10 years.
That's 10 years. Firstly as the Deputy Secretary General, then Secretary General of the Maritime Authority, then the Paramount Chief.
Okay, so there's been an evolution in the way you've moved from Deputy Secretary General, and now. So before I go to the question of why they are not here, I want to understand the issue of what actually constitutes a genocide. Because you did, it seems to me that, well, maybe not necessarily what constitutes a genocide, but from your perspective in the fight, what could have made it, put you in a position not to have the Damaras central to it as you are in it? You did mention extermination orders not issued against the Damara, and extermination orders issued against the Herero, extermination orders issued against the Nama.
Yes.
So, based on that extermination order, because an extermination order, I believe, is a formal declaration by that then government to say, go and wipe these people out. So even though the Damaras were wiped out, as literature says, and as you have also confirmed, even though they were wiped out, because there was no extermination order in the archive or evidence of that, it is not considered a genocide or what?
Yes, it is not considered a genocide. There were utterances to wipe out Hereros. They were utterances to wipe out the Namas. They were not even utterances to wipe out the Namas, the Damaras.
The Damaras.
After the utterances, the Germans put it to pen. Write it all.
They wrote a law and said, this is...
I, so and so, all Hereros, what, women, children, everything that is theirs, must be destroyed in full.
For all my students who might be out there, what Chief is saying is that there was a policy in place to wipe out these people.
The policy, the Herero policy to wipe the Hereros out was issued on the 2nd of October 1904 at a place called Ovombu Dhovitimba, outside Ochinene, in the east, so part of Nambia, Kalahari. That order was translated in Herero and distributed. Take it to the Hereros, let them read it. The only Herero copy that survived is still to this day, the original copy, is in the Botswana National Archive.
Botswana National Archive?
Why Botswana? I don't know how it got
there.
Yeah. But there is the German versions in the window. The Nama Extermination order is also in Afrikaans.
Okay. Now that takes me to the next question, which is a question you already alluded to. From the side, from your perspective, having been in this fight for 10 years and at different levels, from being by the side to the front and then the center, why aren't we hearing about the Damaras being in this fight? I know for anyone out there, you might be saying, look, you should ask that question to a Damara. I am open to ask this question to the Damara Chief or any Damara that is willing to come on the podcast. But at this point, I want to get your opinion.
I think the easiest question that I can ask, that I can answer first, is why we have not gone to incorporate the Damaras as the Hereros.
Yes, why haven't you?
Simply because we confined ourselves to the crime of genocide. That's what we confine. Our case is a case for reparation, which can only be paid for a crime of genocide. The current campaign we have is a crime against genocide. It's a fight against the genocide. So that's what we have in the numbers. I can say that Damaras can galvanize their people, quantify their losses, run their campaigns, mobilize, but their demands are slightly different, in my opinion. And I would, since you are referring to literature, I would want to go to a website. That is a website by, it's called English website, Namibia Library of Dr. Klaus Dirks Windhoek. It's called the Comprehensive Website of Namibian History and Engineering Infrastructure. English version cites Namibia Library of Dr. Klaus Dirks Windhoek. This guy, if you go through his this particular website, there is a section that has the following statement. It says, and this statement refers to events immediately during the genocidal wars. And I quote, a preliminary compensation commission consisting of Attorney Erdmann, O. Erhard, M. Kersten, Karl Schlettwein, and Albert Fox traveled to Berlin in order to obtain compensation for war damages suffered by German farmers. The Reichstag approves, firstly, in June 1904, 2 million mark, and later another 5 million mark, end of quote. So what did these German farmers do? The German farmers went to the Reichstag, the German parliament at the time, and said, we have suffered collateral damages. our farm laborers have run away or you have killed them, they are no longer here. Our animals have no one to look at. Our fences cannot be met. So some of our animals are lost. So we have suffered collateral damage through the wars that the German government has perpetrated on the Hereros. And for those damages, they claim 7 million Deutsche Mark in collateral damage. They were paid. So that is why I'm saying the Damaras in this case could quantify all their collateral damages and there's precedent, and they can demand that from Germany. So that's a different using a precedent. But that is a negotiation, it's not, whereas the genocide is a legal issue defined in UN structures and the template develop how compensation should be provided.
This is it's something new to me. The information you've provided. It's also something harassing to the intellect, because what you're saying now is that while our people suffered here, of which the OvaHerero and Namas are fighting for reparation, for genocide, and of which the Damaras are not highly involved at the moment, but also suffered strong, half of a population wiped away and collateral damage. While these 3 sections of our people in Namibia suffered all of this, the people whose own people committed the genocide and the collateral damage went back home to their governments to ask for compensation for the consequence of the genocide and the collateral damage done by their own people in Namibia. And on this basis, they received a compensation of 7 million Deutsche Mark in collateral damage. So the Germans compensated themselves for committing genocide in Namibia and collateral damage in Namibia.
That's in June 1904.
It's an insult, to the intellect, to humanity, and all that.
Put that money in today's...
I don't even want to try it.
And then compare it with the 1.1 billion.
I don't want to try it, but if you say I should try it, I will do that. Let's leave it for our audience. 7 million Deutschmark paid to German farmers in Namibia for complaining that the German administrators in Namibia and the military committed genocide against Hereros and Namas and the Damaras, as well as collateral damage on them, which is not really direct damage, but a consequence of the damage done to our own people. And they received 7 million Deutsche Mark. Tap the calculator, ask your AI, what year was that? Do you remember?
That's June 1904.
As at June 1904, 7 million Deutsche Mark, what is it in today's currency? And let's do the maths. Thanks very much, Chief. And I still have one more question on this issue of the Damara. From what I'm getting from you, I think you cornered my question actually before my question was more general, but you cornered it specifically to the Herero on why your campaign does not involve the Damara. And you explicitly stated that because the extermination orders were not issued to the Damara, and there's evidence of extermination order on OvaHerero and Nama, based on that, you are fighting for a genocide, and on that basis, you didn't take the pains or the effort to go and get the Damaras in. And instead, you did that with the Namas, knowing that you're on the same course. But you also acknowledge that even if that is not a genocide, because some of us out there will say genocide is a genocide, whether it is written on paper or or not on paper. However, because you're dealing with the law, paper matters. But you're also saying that because it doesn't fit into the frame of your own case, which is why you went to the Nama and not to them, that they also have a dimension And you know, they also have an opportunity through which, or a path through which they could seek for reparation, atonement, and you know, and that is to seek for collateral damage.
Yes.
And there is already a precedence, which is the one set by the Germans themselves in 1904, who went to ask for compensation for collateral damage. Whoever is watching there, if you're Damara, you're a supporter of the Damara like I am, and some of us are, I think there are cases to be made here, either as a genocide, but the argument has to be made differently, or collateral damage, which is clearly, you know, not something that you need the law, you don't need orders for that, and which there's a precedence in law that some people benefited from it. So this explanation is very important.
But most importantly, to add to all this, is pressure. Pressure. Campaign, demonstrations, pressurizing the German government. Last week we had the biggest ever demonstration in town, ever since the Nambia's independence. We had about 80 horses. We had people walking, marching for close to a kilometer in the center of town.
I'll stop you there and then ask my next question.
Yeah.
And the reason I'll stop you there is I understand that pressure, not as a consequence of experience, but from observation. I mean, I see the fights in the newspapers every day.
Yeah.
And thank God there's social media now. I believe it was going on at a different level without much publicity before social media. But if the Damara were to say, look, the Herero and the Nama has established a front for this campaign. You call it campaign against genocide, right? For the genocide, they can choose to call it campaign against the injustice done to all of you, the three of you.
Yeah.
If they were to approach the Herero, in this case you leading the Herero, to say, you have gone far with this cause, we want to be part of it. Irrespective of how you define it, we want to be part of it because it was done against us. What would be your response?
My response to you now is it's welcomed. Because generally, all of us, even other communities who are not affected, need to join the campaign. The more pressure we put, the quicker we get the results. But it's a matter of how you structure the different interests. Because when you come to the negotiations at the end of the day, it becomes how do you structure the negotiations, how do you structure the interests, because the interests are definitely different. Remember, even when 2018, when we had the second National Land Conference, we were working together with the Damaras, looking at how can we structure our campaign to ensure that our interests are served in the second National Land Conference. We had joint meetings. So that similar things can be worked out.
Well, what I can say from all of this is, from what I'm getting from you, and from what I've always known, having engaged with you personally and officially, there's no love lost. We are all one. Yeah. In the same family, people experience different types of hardships, but we are still expected to support each other. Yeah. And this means that all stakeholders on this issue, whether it's the United Nations, the African Union, the Namibian government, the OvaHerero, the Nama communities, and now the Damara, bringing in their own issues, like any other injustice, it will be supported by the Herero people. So I would imagine that what you're saying is that the Herero people do not support any form of injustice, whether it is called genocide or not called genocide.
The case we have against the Joint Declaration, we have brought in a gender, we applied provided space for all traditional authorities in the country, gazetted traditional authorities. The reason is, all these traditional authorities, they sit in the Council of Traditional Leaders, they've won an annual meeting. All these traditional authorities have been in consultation with government on various issues, including the genocide issue. So somewhere, somehow, they have a stake in the final outcome of the joint declaration. Therefore, we have brought them in as a joiner in the respondents, but they can decide. They are self-determined, but they haven't responded. They haven't responded. But they can decide whether they want to be on the side of respondents or on the side of the applicants. In the case we have, that window is open. In fact, yesterday in a court, our lawyers were saying all the parties we have listed as potential respondents because they have a substantial interest in it, or may have substantial interest in the case, must be given a chance for them to decide whether they want to be respondents together with the Namibian government and the German government, or be part of the applicants together with the Landless People's Movement, the OvaHerero traditional authorities, and the 10 Nama traditional leaders, 10 Nama traditional authorities. So they can decide. The Damaras aside, they can decide where to go.
Chief, you've given me quite some time, and I really appreciate it. 2 years ago, a young chap who is, I believe, a YouTuber, and a very successful YouTuber now, if you check him out, came into this country and asked to get access to you for this kind of interview.
Yes, I remember that.
And he did it with
I
you.
forgot his name now.
Good. I've not forgotten. And he did it with you. But to release the information to the public was a problem.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's not yet there.
It's not yet released.
I've not seen that. Yeah. I haven't seen it, and that's part of why I decided, because of the land, the connection to all of this with the land and land issues, I decided it would be good to talk to you. At the Nambia University of Science and Technology, I took over the course you left behind on land tenure systems, which is where we discussed the history of the country, and many a times the discussions we've had, I try to bring it back to my students in the same way that you have presented to me. And so this particular interview has now allowed me to document that for the sake of education, for the sake of learning, for the Namibian who is out there and wants to know more, and for the non-Namibian who is out there and wants to know more about what happened here, and of course for different people who have different sort of opinions, to hear what I want to believe, and I strongly believe is a much more direct opinion coming from the heart of where this has happened. So I thank you very well for this, and I would like to simply say to viewers, the issue of OvaHerero, Nama, genocide, it's something that affects all of us. In every African country you go, there's always some sort of historical injustice left behind for us by the colonial administrators that govern those countries. In today's discussion, it's about Namibia, and you can't have that discussion in Namibia without bringing up the OvaHerero, Nama genocide, and now the collateral damage, done to the Damaras, which the situation now is whether, because it is not part of the extermination order, whether to call it a genocide or not to call it a genocide. But however, the injustice is not being denied by anyone, and I would wish that for the sake of peace, development, and calculated progress in our societies, that we all come together, whether we are Oshuambos, we come from any of the Kavango groups, Damara, Herero, Nama, Afrikaans, German, who else am I missing? Am I missing anyone? You're not being missed. In case I forgot to mention your name, please just know that if you're part of this great country called Namibia, we all can work together and support a cause that we all believe and know that there is evidence that it was done. And over that, we hope that the country will grow further and that the development we expect would happen for us, but most importantly, for the future generation. So with that said, Chief, before we cut the camera, I would like to ask whether you have any last words.
For the listeners, Chikbu, it's good that you have invited me. You have raised a lot of questions which I tried to answer. My hope is that people will go through the podcast, maybe rewatch it several times because there's a lot of information. And with the court cases, one can always Google them up. These court cases have a number, case number. If you go to the e-justice, Nambia e-justice, you can then go to see what the content of the material. For the rest of us, Africa in particular, with so-called third world, this is a case that needs all of our support. We can learn a lot what we have gone through over the last 33 years. We've been on this thing. It has created lessons learned for many people. We hope the people of the Congo and others, Majimaji and so on, will follow suit on how we have gone through this. Of course, we are always willing to share because it's a campaign that needs to go far and wide so that we can get the necessary support for Africa in the first place.
Thank you, Chief. For everyone watching out there, I would like to say thank you. And please do not forget to leave your comments if you think you have an opinion on what has been said. We all have an opinions, and we hope that you can share those opinions respectfully. And also feel free to like. If you like what you're watching, feel free to like it. If you do not like it, also feel free to dislike it. But please know that what is being presented here, the opinions presented and the history presented, all has been a bunch of knowledge put out to create a base for respect for what is happening to all of us here in Africa, but specifically on the case of the Herero and Nama with regards to the genocide and its connection to land. With that said, Chief, I'd like to thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thanks.